The most useful evidence for an ancient iron industry may not be a sword, a spear, or even a finished tool. It may be the waste left behind. A blade can prove that someone possessed iron, but discarded material can answer a harder question. Was this something people could actually do again? Archaeologists do not have an eyewitness account of the first successful smelt. What survives instead are traces of work repeated often enough to leave a record. And that record tells a very different story. One successful smelt would not make an ironworking tradition. The harder problem is how an uncertain experiment became reliable enough to survive beyond the person who first succeeded. That required more than heat or ore. People had to repeat the work, preserve the skill, and keep supplying what the process consumed. To understand when iron became a technology, we have to begin with what people usually threw away. The discarded remains are where the story becomes clearer. At Tel Hammeh in Jordan, archaeologists did not uncover a single object that could announce, by itself, iron was made here. They found something more useful: slag, broken tuyères, charcoal, technical ceramics, and traces of repeated work. Around 930 to 910 BC, those remains accumulated in a place where metalworkers were doing the same difficult job again and again. A finished blade can travel. It can be traded, inherited, repaired, or carried far from the place where it was made. Production waste behaves differently. Slag is the stony residue left after smelting. Tuyères are the clay nozzles that carried air into a furnace. Charcoal records fuel use. Broken furnace material stays close to the work itself. When these traces appear together, they tell archaeologists more than an isolated iron object ever could. Radiocarbon dates from the Tel Hammeh context help fix that activity in time, but the evidence still has limits. It can show that people were producing iron repeatedly. It can show where the work happened and what kinds of remains the work left behind. It cannot tell us the name of the first successful smelter, what that person expected, or whether the earliest success was planned. That shifts the question away from the instant someone first obtained iron. What matters more is when the work became dependable enough to leave repeated traces. But even that creates a problem. Evidence can show that iron was being made. It cannot explain how the skill survived after the people who first learned it were gone. A discovery can disappear with the person who made it. One success leaves an object. A lasting craft requires someone else to repeat the work, recognize mistakes, and eventually teach another pair of hands. Traditional Igbo ironworking in Nigeria offers a useful comparison. Apprentices learned beside experienced workers, repeating the craft until timing, judgment, movement, and the feel of materials became familiar. Those are difficult things to preserve in a list of instructions. Toro ironworkers in western Uganda provide another example of specialized knowledge being controlled and passed through a community. Research on craft apprenticeship reaches the same broader point. Difficult skills can survive through imitation, correction, and practice. None of this proves that early Levantine workshops worked in exactly the same way. It shows something simpler. Knowledge does not need a textbook to survive, but it does need people who know how to pass it on. A furnace can be rebuilt from clay and stone. Lost expertise is harder to recover. But even perfect knowledge could not solve the next problem. A skilled smelter might remember every step and still be unable to work. The fire had to be fed today, then fed again tomorrow. In North Pare, Tanzania, iron production continued for centuries, with evidence reaching at least into the second half of the first millennium CE. Every firing required wood charcoal. Trees had to be cut, the wood converted, and the fuel carried back again and again. One furnace run was a workshop problem. Repeated production became a landscape problem. That does not mean ironworking caused every environmental change around North Pare. Evidence of erosion had already begun before the strongest phase of smelting and smithing. The metalworkers added demands to the land, but they were not acting on an empty landscape. The fire reached farther than the workshop. So did its cost. By that point, the question was no longer simply whether iron could be made. The harder question was whether making it was worth the labor, fuel, and disruption. The obvious answer is that iron must have been so much better that people abandoned bronze. But if that were true, the archaeological record should show a clean replacement. It does not. In Canaan, iron and bronze continued to occupy the same world. During Iron 2A, roughly the 10th to 9th centuries BCE, iron production became more regular and widespread. Yet bronze working continued. Craftspeople did not wake up one morning, abandon familiar tools, and begin using an entirely new material from scratch. Existing skills, workshops, customers, and sources of supply still mattered. Tel es-Safi/Gath makes that overlap visible. Archaeologists found residues from iron production alongside evidence of bronze working, including a crucible associated with bronze metallurgy. The old craft had not simply disappeared when the new one arrived. That changes what better means. Hardness and durability matter, but workshops also depend on familiar skills, available fuel, existing tools, and demand. A material can perform well and still spread slowly when people have reasons to keep using what they already know. So the move toward iron was not simply bronze losing and iron winning. In some communities, the two overlapped. New metalworking could grow beside older craft while workers adapted existing skills to new material. But making iron is only half the life of the material. Eventually, a blade bends, a fitting breaks, or a tool wears out. What happens then? At Saruq al-Hadid, south of Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, archaeologists found an answer in an enormous concentration of iron remains. The broken objects were not necessarily the end of the story. More than 200 kilograms of ferrous material were found there, roughly 440 pounds. That is far too much metal to treat every fragment as a simple loss. Researchers selected 90 iron objects for closer study. In 2019, they examined the pieces with microscopy, X-ray methods, and neutron tomography, looking for traces left by heating, oxidation, and hammering. The metal preserved a history that shape alone could not show. Some pieces had been reheated, some had been worked again. Several appear to have been gathered and forged into semi-finished pieces that could be turned into something new. That changes what a broken tool means. A damaged blade does not have to become trash. A bent fitting can still be valuable because the iron inside it can be heated, reshaped, and used again. The object may end while the material continues. This matters for archaeology because reuse can erase an object's earlier identity. A broken knife could be collected with other scraps, reheated, and forged into something new. The knife disappears even though its iron remains in use. That creates a strange archaeological problem. A site with few broken tools might look poor in iron when people were actually good at reclaiming it. The better they became at reuse, the fewer complete discarded objects they may have left behind. So the record can become thinner precisely because the material stayed useful. How much of iron's earlier history might have disappeared in exactly this way? A missing object, in other words, can sometimes be evidence of successful reuse. So, after all of this evidence, can archaeology finally take us back to the first successful smelt? Probably not. Tel Hammeh can reveal organized production, but not the identity or thoughts of the first smelter. Later craft traditions can show how difficult knowledge may survive without writing, but they cannot recreate an ancient Levantine workshop. Recycling creates another problem. Useful iron can disappear from the record because people kept reworking it. Archaeology is strongest when actions happen often enough to leave several kinds of traces behind. One brief success may vanish almost completely. Repeated work is much harder to hide. And that changes what discovery means. The first successful smelt may remain unknowable, but the transition to reliable ironworking is easier to see. One success proves possibility. Repeated production proves reliability. Skill has to survive. Fuel has to return. Workshops have to keep operating. Broken metal has to remain worth saving. That is why a pile of waste can sometimes tell us more than a sword. A sword proves somebody had iron. A workshop proves people knew how to make it again. And that is the difference between an accident and a technology.